make you feel like it's okay to feel how you feel. And it's just very, very cute. I am obsessed with the illustrations in this book. Like, it is so, so cute. And the wisdom is just really reassuring as well. It is a very comforting book, helped massively by this sassy little frog. The thing I especially love with the illustrations are the shoes and the boots and the heels on every page. Although I feel like I'm more like this, like, seal blob character than the sassy frog rocking the cocoa boots. So, I mean, as you can see, it is a very short book. I think I finished it inside of like 5 minutes. The longest it took was to admire the outfits on each of the pages, or admire the shoes on each of the pages. But it is very cute, and it was a very welcome break from the heaviness of last month. I think it's just one of those books that you can give around and it would instantly cheer somebody up. So yeah, there's not really much more I can say about this book, and I know technically it was cheating, but I still loved it, and I gave it an 8 out of 10. Okay, so book 2 was the top rated book in the humour category of the 2018 Goodreads Choice Awards. The Last Black Unicorn by Tiffany Haddish. I wonder if there are any humour books in that category that aren't memoirs by a comedian. I swear it's always a comedian. Anyways, so as mentioned, it is a memoir. It goes over Tiffany's childhood, relationships she's had, and her dating experiences, and then into obviously her career and how she became successful. I'm just going to be honest and say that I didn't really like this book, or I didn't really enjoy this book. I just couldn't get on with the way that the book is written, and I know that it's written in a way that it's like she's talking to you, but I just find it really jarring, and it almost reads like a child has written it, which sounds very harsh, but it's just not something I could get into. And I also have issues with some of the content in here, and maybe it's just that I'm too sensitive and other people found some of the anecdotes to be really funny or amusing, but I did not laugh one time. And it's not necessarily the point of the book. It's a memoir. It's not just because she's a comedian doesn't mean she has to be funny all the time, but there are some stories, and there's one in particular, there's actually two in particular, but there's one big one about somebody who she has a dalliance with, who works with her at the airport, and it just makes her come off as really superficial and very shallow, and I just didn't enjoy it at all. And I actually feel really sorry for the guy if he reads that book about how he's been represented in that. And that's all I'll say about it, but yeah, I don't know, it left me with a bad taste in my mouth, really. Don't get me wrong, I do feel very sorry for her and what happened to her growing up, and especially how it kind of has impacted her in her relationships, particularly her marriage, and how she's kind of been conditioned to accept abuse as the way love is supposed to be, because she doesn't know any different. And she does actually acknowledge that herself in the book, that she needs to work on how she views men in relationships and how she kind of picks the men, because she's kind of looking almost for the wrong thing and ends up with the wrong thing because she's so conditioned to see it in a very different way to what people who were brought up in, I guess, a functional family environment. And it is awful, and I do genuinely feel sorry for her. That's really all I've got on this book. I mean, I didn't really know anything about her, and give it a 4 out of 10. I'm doing really well with physical books this month. So book number 3 is a personal choice book, and it is Chain Gang All Stars. I actually bought this book way back in January in Orlando Airport, coming home from my honeymoon. And I don't know why I haven't got around to reading it until now. It's a really striking cover. This is actually, the cover is what drew me to it in the first place. But I'll read you a little bit of the blurb so you can see the other reason why it hooked me in. Loretta Thurwar and Tamara Hurricane Stacker are the stars of Chain Gang All Stars, the cornerstone of CAPE, or Criminal Action Penal Entertainment, a highly popular, highly controversial, profit-raising program in America's increasingly dominant private prison industry. It's the return of the gladiators, and prisoners are competing for the ultimate prize, their freedom. In CAPE, prisoners travel as links in chain gangs, competing in death matches for packed arenas with righteous protesters at the gates. It goes on a little bit longer, but I'll spare you. I would say Chain Gang All Stars is like Gladiator meets the Hunger Games, because they compete in death matches, as the blurb said, but they can also earn sponsorship, very much like the Hunger Games, that can help their survival, so they can get food or more money, but their money is called blood points, and that can help them with better weapons. They can buy video footage of their opponents to learn about their weaknesses. Like, it's all very beneficial, so it all helps to like play up to the crowd. And honestly, it is written and it feels just as intense as watching a movie. The author, Nana J. Brenya, I'm so sorry if I've butchered that, does such an incredible job of creating this world of, it's called hard action sport, down to the sponsorship or adverts, commercials. They're in asterisks at the bottom of the page, and it's usually things like tactical weapons or armour that the links are wearing, but it just adds to this feel of an arena, of a program, of just, it just really helps you envisage everything that's happening. But alongside this amazing, gripping, heart-wrenching action, he's also managed to weave in this take on the American justice system, inhumane incarceration, racism, LGBTQ rights, Black Lives Matter, and it's just so clever. I've never read anything that is this clever. It's so eye-opening, and even though the book is set in a dystopian future with death matches, it really doesn't feel so far off, particularly because he weaves in real crimes that have been committed or perpetuated against especially black people, and they are in asterisks at the bottom. And so there are a lot of things. There's something about tear gas and tasers and stats on suicide, abuse, corruption in the prison systems, and about laws as well. And so it's just so insightful, and it really does make you think that something as extreme as this CAPE system could genuinely happen, because parts of it are currently happening right now in America, and I'm sure in other countries as well. But it's just so cleverly done that you're reading this action book and then your mind is being opened at the same time, and you're being brought to like this sharp awareness of what is happening. I honestly was so immersed in this book the whole way through. There are a lot of characters, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think you need it in order to be immersed in the whole world, because you have the prisoners, the links themselves, you have the protesters, you have the consumers of the sport, the reluctant consumer and the avid consumer, and then the prison system, I guess the board of directors within one of the most profitable prisons. I was very emotionally invested, I have to say, particularly in the two, Loretta Thurwall and Amara Hurricane Stacker. And I really did not want to finish the book because I was very fearful of what might happen at the end. I just wish it went on longer, just because I enjoyed it. So I don't think it will come as any surprise whatsoever that I gave this book a 10 out of 10. And it's the third book this year that has got this accolade. I beg you to read this book if you have not already, because it really does have a bit of everything in it. But the powerful message that comes out loudest of all is so worth it, it's so worthy, and it's so clever and so unique. And I think it is an insanely good book. Please read it. I can't recommend it enough. So I actually switched around the order for my last two books purely because we had a short-lived patch of sunshine in England and it was very warm and my Kindle was dead and I wanted to go sit in the sun. So I switched it out for a paperback book. So book 4 is the top rated book in the YA or young adult fiction category of the 2018 Goodreads Choice Awards. And it is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I love the feel of this book. It's very almost like gritty. The book is split into two different perspectives. The first one is West McCrae, who is a podcast host, and this side of the book, the format is through the podcast transcripts and then phone calls he has with his boss and other people off air. And he is tracking the disappearance of Sadie, who is the titular character. And she is also the second perspective that you hear. And she has disappeared in search of her sister's killer. She's 19 years old and she's just gone off into the world to try and seek her vengeance. So you get his perspective tracking her and then her in real time on the hunt for this man. So it did actually take me a little while to get really into this book. I really enjoyed the podcast section of it because it's quite punchy, because it's like a podcast. But Sadie's perspective I found a little too poetically written at first. And so it kind of took me a while to get into this stride of understanding her and I guess, her motive. And I felt like it really needed that podcast section to speed it up and keep it moving along. That said, once things start unfolding a bit more and you get more explanation into what's going on or why she's seeking this justice, apart from the obvious that she's tracking down her sister's killer, it is so gripping and you do get used to the style of writing for Sadie's perspective anyways. But it is shocking. There were multiple points in the book that made me gasp out loud with these like little twists and reveals on the podcast side. It's one of those ones where you like, and then you have to put the book down for a little bit just to let your heart rate come down, or just to kind of comprehend what you've just read before you can get back into it. And I think it's really clever because the podcast is 5 months behind Sadie. So you feel this frustration that you want them to hurry up and catch up, because you can see where she's going. And you also are like willing them because they're obviously piecing together clues and you know the truth, but could they go off in a different, take a different interpretation of a clue and go off in a different way? It's very, very clever. And that really, both sides were very, very engaging, very riveting. By the end of the book, you are just completely hooked and you want justice, or I wanted justice for Sadie so bad. And you just, I don't know, you're just championing her all the way through. The blurb, the very last line, it will haunt you long after you reach the switching up the style, and this is far better than a book I read a few months ago called Murder in the Family, which is kind of in the style of like a Netflix style true crime documentary. This is far better than that. That kind of missed the mark. But for the reasons I've mentioned in this video about Sadie, I give this book a 9 out of 10, and I really do recommend you read this book. I will say, I do think it should come with some trigger warnings, so maybe before you pick this book up, maybe just do a little bit of research. That's all I'm going to say. We have come to the last book of May, and that is the only Kindle book of the month. Because we switched things around with Sadie, this is the self-development book, and it is called Tiny Traumas. And I'm not gonna lie, I am filming this video on the 19th of May, so I am well aware we still have quite a bit of the month left. But I'm actually only just over 50% through this book, so my thoughts will be on what I've read so far, as well as the rating. So this book is all about those little things that happen in your life that don't feel serious enough at the time to mention to somebody as to why you're feeling a certain way, but then it all kind of, it has a cumulative effect, and over time it really does start affecting you as a person. And this book helps you dive into what that looks like. So the first chapter is all about defining what a tiny trauma, or a tiny T, as the author Dr. Meg Arrell describes them. So it lays out different types of tiny traumas through relationships, work, society, all different aspects, so that you can start identifying what your tiny trauma might be. And then the other chapters kind of take specific tiny traumas like happiness, procrastination, perfectionism, and delves into them in a bit more detail. So I really like the way this book is laid out. Each chapter, when it delves into the specific tiny traumas, is in 3 parts, and Dr. Meg Arrell has like a AAA approach, and it is awareness, acceptance, and action. And so each chapter goes into the awareness, kind of how to recognize the tiny trauma and how it might be impacting you. Acceptance is accepting that this has impacted you, and that it's not necessarily like a blame game or whatever. It's happened to you, and you are accepting that, 1, it happened, but 2, that you're going to do something about it. And then the 3 is the action, and for every tiny trauma there is an exercise or an action that you can do to help you kind of change the way you view that tiny trauma and be able to move on more successfully with your life. And because it's laid out like this, it's very easy to follow, especially the action section, and some of the activities I genuinely have found very useful. And it covers a wide range as well. There's some breathing exercises, there's some like drawings, there's journal prompts. It's kind of got a bit of everything, so it should suit whatever your learning style is. You should be able to find something to fit. I will say some of the chapters I've read so far have been pretty long, and I have found myself kind of drifting off and my attention kind of slipping away, but that is more in the like scene setting, awareness section. And then when it gets into the accepting and action, and the more, I guess, the practical side of it, then it is very, very interesting, and that's a lot more punchy. But she does say you do really need the awareness, 1, to be able to recognise it, but also you can't really jump from the tiny trauma straight into action without like doing all 3 steps. I just wish it was just a little bit more condensed. But I think overall it's just a really interesting premise, in that it's looking at these tiny things that kind of chip away at you and knock your self-confidence, and you end up being somebody and you don't really know how you got there, but you know you want to be better. And I find that really powerful, to have a book that's digging into the small instances, because else comes up in the book. So yeah, I'll give my rating of it so far. I'm really enjoying it, to be fair, and there is a chapter coming up, I know, that is on imposter syndrome, which speaks very loudly to me. Where I am at the moment. So yeah, I think, to be honest, it's going to be pretty much the same. It's the same format, same structure, so I don't think my rating will change. But because I find it very fascinating, I have given this book an 8 out of 10. I would definitely recommend it so far. I think it's very easy to get past the length of the chapters, which is kind of the biggest fault I can think of. So yeah, that is Tiny Traumas. So that's your lot. Because I'm filming this so early this month, there is a chance that I will get to read some bonus books this month. I'm off to Croatia for my first wedding anniversary, although by the time you're watching this, I'll already be back. So that's why I'm filming so far in advance. But one of my bonus books is going to be one of my mystery books, that if you watched my mystery haul, you know exactly what those are.